Chair to recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan people are falling further and further behind in the face of the ever-rising cost of living. Right. And this tired and out-of-touch government is offering nothing when it comes to relief. Nothing but higher taxes, higher fees, and higher power bills. That's the Sask Party record, Mr. Speaker. That's their record. Why won't the Premier finally offer Saskatchewan people some relief, and why won't he deliver a fuel tax cut for the people of Saskatchewan today?
Recognize the Deputy Premier.
I don't think it's going to come as any surprise that this side of the House fares to differ with the opinion of that side of the House on whether or not we're doing nothing. The province that she is now, the envy for them is they have a Manitoba envy because Manitoba did choose to forego the price on their fuel tax for 6 months, Mr. Speaker. But let me just take a look at Saskatchewan compared to Manitoba. In Saskatchewan, you could earn $20,000 more. $20,000 more before you pay income tax than in Manitoba. I think I'm going to pick the affordability measures of being able to earn more money with no income tax in Saskatchewan. Let's just talk about what we have for children, Mr. Speaker. In Saskatchewan, we have a $150 active families benefit for every child in that family. In Manitoba, that's only $54, Mr. Speaker. I think I'll take the tax cut that we offer here in Saskatchewan. In Manitoba, they do not have a children's drug plan. In Saskatchewan, we do, implemented by this government. I think I would take that in Saskatchewan over Manitoba. In Manitoba, their PST is 7%. In Saskatchewan, it's 6%. I think I'll take the affordability measures that this government's brought in Saskatchewan any day of the week over the way they tax in Manitoba.
I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, another day, another demonstration that this tired and out-of-touch Sask Party government isn't listening to the people of this province. They think that they know best. A bad case of unearned confidence. And that's certainly the case when it comes to education. In today's Leader Post, a school board trustee says that the Sask Party gave boards a take-it-or-leave-it offer with only 24 hours to accept the deal. Mr. Speaker, that is not leadership, that is bullying. Why is this government bullying school divisions instead of negotiating a fair deal with teachers?
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, are we actually standing on the floor of this House debating some anonymous person who made a comment to the Leader Post, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, let's get serious. And I'll tell you something. I've been around this province from corner to corner to corner around this province, Mr. Speaker, meeting with school boards who will actually put their name behind an agreement, Mr. Speaker. What we have brought forward last week, Mr. Speaker, we've announced the largest ever school operating funding increase in provincial history, Mr. Speaker. $180 million that will go right into our schools and supporting teachers and educators and professionals of all types, Mr. Speaker. As well, Mr. Speaker, as with the multi-year funding agreement that we've signed with the SSBA and the 27 school divisions, is ensuring that classroom support funding stays firm, for the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when I was a school board trustee, now mind you, that was back in the days of Premier Brad Wall, I never once felt like I needed anonymity to be able to speak my mind about education. But the fact, Mr. Speaker, that trustees in this province today feel that they need to remain anonymous tells you everything you need to know about this tired and out-of-touch government. Locally elected trustees should have the autonomy to raise the concerns that they have about education. But the result of that Premier's record is this, Mr. Speaker. The result is the only autonomy they have is where to cut year after year after year. How can that Minister of Education claim to support school board autonomy, Mr. Speaker, when he can't even go public, when trustees can't even go public about the bullying from that government?
Recognize Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, you know, this is coming from a leader of the opposition and opposition members who suggested that we shouldn't work with the Saskatchewan School Boards Association on this agreement, that instead we should sign an agreement with the provincial union, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's not what this government is going to do. We have been clear right from the start of this debate, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to work with our 27 locally elected school boards from all over the province, of all different sizes and types, Mr. Speaker, Francophone, public, Catholic, Mr. Speaker. These are the people who are making the right decisions for kids' classrooms around our province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have met with these 26 out of 27 school boards, Mr. Speaker. We have heard that it is the funding of this government that is going to help them continue to provide supports in our classroom, Mr. Speaker. It is time, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, for the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation to come back to the bargaining table and start looking for solutions instead of looking for excuses to stay on strike.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan people are sick and tired of the smarmy arrogance. And that includes a whole lot of trustees, Mr. Speaker. People of this province deserve so much better. And Saskatchewan people deserve a government that gets a deal with Saskatchewan people, Mr. Speaker, and also offers school boards some respect. Mr. Speaker, it can happen, but not under this government. It's time for a change. Does the Minister of Education have any clue at all how much damage he's doing to education or to his government's credibility?
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell that Leader of the Opposition, again, a former school board trustee herself, is that I have spent the time in this portfolio, Mr. Speaker, traveling around the province, listening directly to school boards, having frank conversations when they're actually willing to put their name behind it, Mr. Speaker, actually willing to have frank discussions about pressures that are experienced in their division, Mr. Speaker, and our government has responded, Mr. Speaker. Our government has responded by announcing the largest ever increase to school operating funding, Mr. Speaker, taking the classroom supports funding, Mr. Speaker, $356 million in this next year's budget, Mr. Speaker, and setting that as a minimum level over the next 4 years, providing with those 27 school divisions, Mr. Speaker, with the predictability that they need to provide the supports that are needed in classrooms across the province. Mr. Speaker, our government keeps meeting the STF's requests, and the STF keeps moving the goalposts, Mr. Speaker. It is time for the STF to come back to the bargaining table and start looking for real solutions instead of looking for excuses to stay on strike.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister of Education really present school divisions with a funding agreement and give them only 24 hours to accept it, yes or no?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would remind the members of the opposition and the members of the public, Mr. Speaker, that we have been having these discussions about supporting school divisions for the last number of months, Mr. Speaker. We've been having discussions all around the province at these board tables directly with elected board chairs and board trustees, many of which I've had my colleagues join me at, and they can speak to the frankness of those meetings and the direct conversation that we're able to have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we came up with was the multi-year funding agreement, delivered that to the Saskatchewan School Boards Association, had several calls with board chairs over a number of days, Mr. Speaker, about the agreement. And look at this. We have come forward with a multi-year funding agreement signed and endorsed by all 27 school divisions, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that classroom supports funding, $350 million, Mr. Speaker, is set at a minimum level for the next 4 years. That is the type of predictable long-term funding that school divisions in this province need to be successful.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, did the Minister of Education actually threaten school board trustees with legal action if they spoke out about his backroom deal, yes or no?
Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, that is a disgusting accusation by the member opposite. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that as the Minister of Education, as an MLA in this province, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the people who put their name on a ballot and stand up to serve the people of this province, whether it's on an RM council, Mr. Speaker, whether it's on a municipal council, whether it's as an MLA or whether it's as a school board trustee in this province, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for school board trustees in the province. It's unfortunate that the member would sink to that level.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, what does that minister think it says about his leadership and the culture of fear created by this Sask Party government that locally elected school board trustees don't feel safe speaking out about his threats and his backroom deals?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, you know, that member opposite wants to talk about a culture of fear. What I have worked to establish with the 27 school boards around the province, Mr. Speaker, is a culture of collaboration. Mr. Speaker, most board chairs in this province have my direct cell phone number, Mr. Speaker. I speak with board chairs on a regular basis every single week. That is what my job as the minister is to do, to continue to collaborate with these school boards all across the province. That's what I do on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that culture of fear that member opposite talks about, I know nothing about that.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, what did the Minister of Education threaten to take away from school boards if they refuse to sign his backroom deal?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Another anonymous report.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell you again, the discussions that I've had with boards over the last several months that have led to this multi-year funding agreement, Mr. Speaker, what we have brought forward in this agreement, Mr. Speaker, is ensuring that classroom support funding, Mr. Speaker, over $350 million provided directly to divisions to support students in classrooms all across the province, Mr. Speaker. We are guaranteeing that funding over the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker. That's what we've offered to school divisions, and we're going to continue working with school divisions to ensure that those monies impact our classrooms each and every single day.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, this is what the school board trustee had to say about the backroom deal that this minister threatened school boards into signing. Quote, "It is going to be nowhere near even the needs that we have currently, let alone the needs we're going to have in years to come with growing enrollment. It's nothing." What is the minister's response to that?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, for that member to stand up and say that a guarantee of $356.6 million over the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker, $356.6 million each year for the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker, that's not nothing. Those are real dollars that are going to impact our students, providing supports in the classroom to hire more teachers, to hire more professionals, to ensure that our kids have the best opportunity possible, Mr. Speaker. This is a substantial agreement that we've made with school boards, an agreement that they've been asking for, Mr. Speaker. We've delivered on that, endorsed by all 27 school boards, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what this member opposite is saying is absolutely ridiculous on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon East.
Mr. Speaker, it's a clear question. Does that Minister of Education seriously think he's doing a good job as the Minister of Education?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I see we've reached a low point of question period, Mr. Speaker. I can tell this House, Mr. Speaker, I can tell the people of Saskatchewan, I'm proud to serve as the MLA for the Battlefords. I work hard every single day to serve my constituents, Mr. Speaker. And as the Minister of Education, Mr. Speaker, I have driven tens of thousands of kilometres all across this province, Mr. Speaker, to listen directly to those people who are elected across our province in all respective areas, Mr. Speaker, to represent parents and families and students in those respective school divisions, Mr. Speaker. I take a lot of pride in that, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to be driving to northern Saskatchewan later this week to meet with another school division. I look forward to continuing that work and working on creating the best possible pre-K to 12 education system in this province.
Recognize the member from Cockrill.
Mr. Speaker, right now there is chaos raging in our education system. We have trustees, elected trustees, feeling bullied, and they're speaking out. We have teachers in their third month of job action, and when his constituents come to his office to speak to him, that minister called the RCMP. Does the minister really think that all of these failures amount to a job well done?
Hear, hear. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, you know, in regards to what happened in my constituency office last Friday, I answered several questions to the media out in the rotunda yesterday after question period. I made it very clear that whether a member sits on that side of the House or on this side of the House or as an independent member, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, the staff that work for all of us in our respective communities deserve to be treated with respect and to not be intimidated at constituency offices across the province. That is a bare minimum for me, Mr. Speaker, as an MLA and certainly as a minister, and it's disappointing that the members opposite would expect anything different, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would just remind members opposite that the job sanctions that our students are experiencing, Mr. Speaker, it is the choice of the STF leadership and the STF leadership alone, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we are calling on the STF leadership to return to the bargaining table. It's time to find solutions and not to be looking for excuses to continue to strike.
Recognize the member for Saskatoon Fairview.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we were joined on the floor of this Assembly by Lindia Kakakaway. She's waiting for breast cancer care and she's waiting for knee surgery. And when I asked the Minister of Health why we have the longest wait times for knee surgery, he said, and I quote, "That is not correct." But, Mr. Speaker, it's the minister who is not correct. Knee surgery wait times in Saskatchewan are the highest in Canada. That is a fact. Will the minister take this opportunity to correct the record?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spoke to yesterday was significant investments that we have made into our surgical wait list and our surgical program here in this province. Mr. Speaker, there are provinces right across this country that are facing surgical backlogs as a result of the pandemic and other related issues. Mr. Speaker, we have invested $670 million into this year's budget for surgeries across Saskatchewan to reduce wait times in this province. We do have work to do, Mr. Speaker. We recognize that, but we are making progress when it comes to reducing the wait times for surgeries in Saskatchewan, whether it's for knees and hips and other surgeries, knowing that there are patients, Mr. Speaker, most importantly, that we need to take care of. And that's why we're continuing to make these investments, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to work to achieve those benchmarks so that people get the surgeries that they need as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member for Saskatoon Fairview.
He didn't even come close to answering the question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister is entitled to his own opinions, but he is not entitled to his own facts. Saskatchewan is dead last when it comes to knee replacement wait times, and we've been dead last in Canada every year since 2019. Those are the facts. Wait times are getting longer. People are living in pain without the care they need. How is this acceptable to this Minister of Health?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We continue to make, as I said earlier, investments into surgeries and a number of areas of health care in this province, Mr. Speaker. That includes expanding of surgical services right across this province, getting more surgeries done wherever we can in communities right across Saskatchewan, whether it's in Regina, whether it's in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker. We're also adding additional surgeries in places like Prince Albert, Mr. Speaker, where a fifth operating theatre opened in Prince Albert earlier this winter, allowing for increased procedure volumes in PA. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the investments that we are making into surgical capacity in our province to make sure that we're adding capacity, creating more surgical opportunities for patients in this province. We're going to continue to make those investments, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon Fairview.
Mr. Speaker, the minister likes to talk about investments. He brings out the spin. He talks about plans, but people care about results, Mr. Speaker. Are in. The wait time for Saskatchewan people needing a knee replacement is 466 days. Those are the facts. Longer wait times than every province in Canada. How is it that with more money going into healthcare than ever before, this tired and out-of-touch government has the worst results in Canada?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we talked about a little bit earlier this year, talked about some additional surgeries, as a result of additional funding, Mr. Speaker. From April 1st of last year to December 31st, we had the highest volume of surgeries ever completed during that 9-month period, Mr. Speaker. A record number of surgeries. Thankful to our surgical teams, the surgeons, the nurses, everybody that's part of that team to make sure that they're collaborating to get the surgeries that people need in this province, Mr. Speaker. We're going to going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to make significant investments into our surgical program and into a variety of other healthcare initiatives, such as we announced earlier today with the expansion of nurse practitioners in this province and greater utilization and being able to maximize their abilities. Mr. Speaker, you're going to see more of that to come when the budget is announced next week, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Saskatoon-Fairview.
Mr. Speaker, we have the longest knee surgery wait times in Canada. That is a fact. And it's also a fact that we have the longest hip replacement wait times in Canada. All of this because this tired and out-of-touch government's record of privatizing healthcare system, not bolstering the public system, and not investing in what frontline workers care the most about, Mr. Speaker. What does the Minister of Health have to say to Saskatchewan people who are left waiting for a hip replacement longer than every other province in Canada?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated yesterday, since the launch several years ago of the private surgical facilities in Saskatchewan, they've performed more than 158,000 surgeries. 158,000 surgeries, Mr. Speaker. What would the member for Fairview, what would she say to those people? To those people across this province, the 158,000 surgical patients that have had those surgeries through private centres, what would she say to them? Because we know, Mr. Speaker, what their position is on private surgeries, anything, heaven forbid, we dip our toes into anything private, whether it's surgeries, whether it's the 2-for-1 MRIs, Mr. Speaker. We know they're opposed to that. They're all about ideology, Mr. Speaker, not about surgeries, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Saskatoon-Fairview.
We appreciate the minister's fear-mongering, Mr. Speaker. We would bolster the public system. They know we would bolster the public system, and that's the answer to get surgeries under control, Mr. Speaker. Although it is nice to see the minister auditioning for opposition, maybe he'll have his chance just yet. Mr. Speaker, the Sask Party doesn't like it when we bring up their record on health care, but it's because it's a record that they can't defend. Under this Premier's watch, it's true that they're spending more money on health care ever before. They're not getting any results, Mr. Speaker. That's why we have the longest wait times in Canada for knee surgeries and hip replacements. Those are the facts, Mr. Speaker. When will this tired and out-of-touch government accept any responsibility for the damage they've done to the healthcare system in Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Lots to choose from there, Mr. Speaker. I believe the Leader of the Opposition is on the record, if I'm not mistaken, as being opposed to private surgical centres. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Speaker, they're getting animated over there. They don't want to talk about their record or their health care plan. They've had plenty of opportunities, Mr. Speaker, to say what they would do differently, to come out with some sort of a platform when it comes to health care, but they don't, Mr. Speaker. They don't have any ideas whatsoever. They're opposed to everything, and frankly, every opportunity they have, Mr. Speaker, they go down and they run down the people of this province. They run down the healthcare workers of Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, including the member for Elphinstone Centre yesterday, who on the topic of breast cancer happened to call the government's announcement, I think she called it a flashy announcement, Mr. Speaker, when that couldn't be further from the truth. When we were joined by Dr. Sarah Miller for the announcement last week, Dr. Sarah Miller said that this initiative was as a result of a working group that was formed by surgeons and healthcare workers that, quote-unquote, culminated in the announcement last week of the Breast Health Centre, Mr. Speaker. That's healthcare workers supporting this healthcare system. To appreciate it if the NDP didn't run them down.
Recognize the member from Regina
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 74 lives lost to overdose in just the first 2 months of this year. Last year, a record 476 families lost a loved one. This situation is out of control, Mr. Speaker. With fewer and fewer supports, when and where people need them, this crisis is only going to get worse in communities large and small, all across this province. When will this minister admit that he's got it wrong and bring forward an evidence-based plan to prevent overdoses and save lives?
Recognize the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every loss of life due to an overdose is a tragedy, and this government is working hard to help people overcome their addictions by supporting them so that they can lead lives in recovery, Mr. Speaker. Right. The member opposite talks about less and less supports. It couldn't be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Our government is adding 500 addiction treatment spaces across this province. We're making it easier for individuals to access those treatment spaces, Mr. Speaker, and we are providing them with the wraparound supports that they need through recovery-oriented systems of care, Mr. Speaker, that will give those individuals the supports and the services that they need so that they can lead healthy lives in recovery. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.